Good morning. Welcome to the Science of Mind class. I'm Dr. Petra, and I'm here with Ryan and Richard, and we're doing our Sunday morning Science of Mind class thing. And I noticed that in these pages right now in the Science of Mind, we're on page 194 and 195, but even the last few pages, this is one of those places where I feel like I want to just read the book to you. And of course, it's not what we're here to do, but oh my gosh, it's so juicy. And so, what shall we say? It's so nuanced in the understanding of what we're doing. And it's one of the reasons why we do this class, is because we don't use our spiritual tools and our spiritual principles on blind faith. We don't do it because somebody said it works. We don't do it in the hope that it will work. We use it because we understand what we're doing and how we're engaging with the universe and with life. So we're continuing on our conversation. We're in the chapter on physical perfection, and we're continuing on the conversation. Last week we started with the will and the difference between will and willpower, and that it's actually not our power at all that creates, even though we say we co-create or we create our reality. Well, partly we use the word we co-create because it's actually the universal law that is the power and the intelligence. What we do is provide the direction and the mold and the concrete idea of the result that we're going for. But it's really the power of the universe that's creating, because that's what it does. It creates. It moves from that absolute impulse of life into this beautiful expression that we call the physical universe, the space-time continuum, and obviously probably multiverses and way more than we can possibly imagine. So from will, we get to this next sort of piece of it where we talk about the idea of concentration. And it goes along with the will, right? The will, we talked last week, is the focusing agent. It's like a laser beam. And we pay attention to what we are focusing on. And then we have this idea that we concentrate on it. And the use then of our concentration is not an effort to compel, but the desire to permit the stream of creative energy to take definite form. This is the first full paragraph on 194. To try to force through concentration would be to give ourselves an adverse suggestion. Meaning, the idea would be we would have to concentrate so hard because somehow we're like trying to make water flow uphill. And so then we have to really concentrate on it. But do you see, we're using a creative law. We're aligning ourselves with creative energy. We're aligning ourselves with the idea that physical wholeness is actually the divine pattern and blueprint of our lives, that having healthy, happy, sane lives that contribute is actually the desire of the universe itself. And so our job is not an effort to compel, but a desire to permit the way that life is already seeking to express itself, to take definite form. To try to force through concentration would be to give ourselves an adverse suggestion and bring upon ourselves the very opposite of our wishes, though through recognizing an opposite power to the power of God, to the power of the universe. Right? Because when we think we have to concentrate on it, we're assuming that there's something resisting us, or there's quite frankly, something trying to go in a different direction. And if we're aligned with health and love and abundance and joy and the desires of our soul, there's nothing that's seeking to oppose us from a universal point of view. So what we concentrate on is our attention. What we concentrate is our attention. The law creates the form. Our job now, so our will focuses, and then our concentration keeps our attention on the end result, not on the vagaries of things that might be coming up along the way, and certainly not on we don't want to give too much attention to the things that cause us to be afraid or that cause us to be anxious. Remember, we don't deny those things, not by any means, but we don't want to concentrate on them. We don't want to give them our attention. So at the bottom of that paragraph, the riddle is solved the moment we place thought, imagination, will, and concentration where they rightly belong in the creative order. Thought, right, which is the conscious and deliberate decision to choose to focus on health rather than ill health. The imagination, which is our ability to imagine the end result in some form or fashion, whether we visualize it, whether we feel it, whether we sense it, whether we talk to ourselves about it. We imagine it in our minds as already done. The will allows us to laser in on that as opposed to whatever diagnosis we've received or whatever fear there is or whatever else is going on. Our concentration holds our will focuses on that, and then our concentration holds our attention there. That which we pay attention to grows. Can I say that again? That which we pay attention to grows. Now, this is not only true with our physicality, this is true with our life itself. So concentrating on and paying attention to the negative news and the ain't it awful and oh my God, I'm afraid is putting our attention on that. We don't deny. We don't pretend it's not there. We pay attention. We concentrate on and pay attention to that which is moving us in the direction of our end result. So I really want you to think about this series, thought. The first thing is the thought. We have to actually have a conscious thought and say, I'm going to pay attention to this. I'm going to focus on that. I'm going to decide that I'm going to be healthy. Whatever that, right? That's our conscious use of our trained thought. We begin to imagine the end result. It's not enough to just say to ourselves, but to really imagine it, to really embrace it, embody it, feel it, sense it, know it, right? To make it real to us. To use the will to really laser in on it, and then our concentration keeps us focused. And this is kind of the hard part, right? Day after day after day after day. To stay focused, for our attention to be attending to that which we choose to attend to. So thought, imagination, will, and concentration, right? You could actually write that down as a powerful series of how do I manifest something in my life? How do I heal something in my life? How do I change something in my life? Just exactly that. Now it goes on to say this, which I think is really powerful too, which we sometimes forget. A good psychological balance is struck when the will and the emotions are rightly poised. When the will and the emotions are rightly poised, that is, when the intellect first decides what the emotions are to respond to. How many of us find ourselves emotionally responding to something, and because we feel it, we let it run us? And when we allow our emotions to be the thing that's in the foreground of our engagement with life, our emotions are responses and reactions to things. When our intellect first decides what our emotions are to respond to, what that means is our will is focusing us on that which we've decided to focus on. So that our emotions, so for instance, We're talking about physical perfection, right? We have some kind of a diagnosis, and our intellect and our will says, I'm going to focus on all the times I've healed myself in the past. I'm going to focus on, maybe it's some really big diagnosis. I'm going to go find somebody who has healed themselves of this, whether through allopathic medicine, whether through alternative medicine, whether through spiritual healing, or some combination thereof. I'm going to show myself that it's possible. And now, instead of over and over and over again focusing on the negative diagnosis and having emotions around it of fear and anxiety and all of those kinds of things, right? My intellect, my will is saying, no, I'm going to focus over here, and I'm going to focus on the healing miracles of Jesus, and I'm going to focus on what I know to be spiritually true. And now my emotions will respond to what I focus on, and my emotions will begin to fall in line with, right, that's right, I can do this. Yes, I expect this. My emotions become engaged in that which my will decides I'm going to pay attention to. And my mind, my intellect, my reason, whatever words we want to use to talk about that, is the thing that says, no, that's what I'm going to pay attention to. And then it's the emotional content, right, that begins to generate the fire behind that. The problem is, of course, that our emotional content is often stuck on the negative, and then we're over here trying to make the positive sort of somehow work, but we're giving the emotional content, the emotional response to the negative, so much power because we keep attending to it. We keep concentrating on it. And so this process is the intellect decides what the emotions are to respond to. After the intellect has made this decision, then the imagination is called into play and the game of life commences. How is the imagination called into play? Well, to imagine that which we have decided we're going to focus on, to begin to imagine the end result and what that looks like, to begin to imagine not only the healing of our body, but the healing of our political system, the healing of our planet, the healing of our families, all of these things, right? Rather than allowing the emotion of fear or anxiety, or it'll never get better, it'll always be this way, or isn't it awful, and how horrible, 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 right? All those emotions are keeping us in that negative groove of the thing that we actually don't want. It is the office of the will to determine that to which the imagination is to respond. So it's the intellect which decides that what the emotions are going to respond to, and it is the will, which determines what the imagination is going to respond to. Now, again, remember that this is in dealing with healings, changes. This isn't necessarily how we're going to always walk around in life all the time, right? Of course, sometimes it's lovely to allow life to emerge, to simply show up somewhere and allow ourselves to be open to the energy and feel our responses to it. It's lovely to open our intuition and allow the imagination to begin to play with our intuition and see what emerges, right? That is an entirely different use of all of these. We're talking here about the deliberate healing of something, an intentional and deliberate healing, whether it's a physical healing, an emotional healing, a psychological healing, or a healing in the world of our affairs. Okay, so that's the framework within which we're working. And so this process is very deliberate and very coherent. And guess what? We actually have to be in charge of it. The I that I am, the you that you are. We actually have to be in charge of it. So one of the most important things to remember is that we are always causing something to be created for us. Always. The universal law that is the co-creative power is always creating. It's always taking what our thoughts and emotions are responding to, what our will and concentration is focusing on. It is always creating. Always. We don't turn the law on. We don't ask it to work for us. We don't aim it at something per se, right? It's always working. It's a universal law and power. What we're giving it is direction. We're giving it direction, and we're giving it energy with our emotional and imaginative participation, right? While our intellect and our will is keeping us focused and attending. Whatever cause we have set in motion must produce some kind of an effect. Are we producing the effects we should like to experience? The creative process will go on willy-nilly. We cannot beat nature at its own game, for we are some part of the game she is playing. Shall the result in our lives be a comedy or a tragedy? We are given the will to decide the issue. Okay, this is a mouthful, all of this. The way that the thoughts and emotions play together, the way that the will and imagination play together, the way that this process it's a whole process where we engage our whole being, really all of our faculties. We want them to line up in the direction of the healing and the end result that we're seeking to experience and produce. So we're going to stop there. It's a big mouthful. It could not be more important. And of course, it's in the chapter on physical perfection, but it has implications all over the place. So we're going to stop there. We'd love to invite you to make a comment or share or chat or ask a question or anything. So Ryan, we're going to come to you and see what we've got going on with the folks that are here with us today.
Well, thanks, Petra, and good morning to all of you out there in Facebook and Zoom world. If you're on Facebook Live, you can always leave your questions or your comments on there, and I can read them aloud here in the room. If you're here with us on the Zoom room itself, go ahead and hit the raise your hand icon located down below, or you can always put your questions or your comments inside of the chat box. And I do want to mention to everybody who's watching, we do keep them anonymous, so in that way, if you have something more sensitive that you do want to ask, feel free to do that. We're a loving, welcoming community. So, does anybody have any questions or thoughts? I'm just going to look here in our Zoom room to see if we have any hands raised. And we'll do the awkward silence. And here's the awkward silence. I could sing to you guys until we get a hand raised.
I know, it's a lot to think about, right? Thought, will, imagination, and emotions, and concentration, and how these all play together. Yeah, it's a lot to think about. And you might ask yourself the question, where is it out of order for me? Where do I tend to go first? Do I follow this sort of line, or do I allow, let's say, my emotions or my imagination to actually be the driving factor? It's really worth asking. While you're thinking about it, I'll just tell you a story. I remember many, many years ago, my son was young, I don't know, 6 or 7 years old, and I was working. I was here at the center, and I was working, and all of a sudden I had this wave of anxiety, And somehow I thought, I know something terrible has happened to Jason. Something really awful has happened to Jason. And I couldn't reach anybody. I couldn't call. I couldn't reach anybody at home, and my imagination began to run wild, and it just, and I was imagining that he'd hurt himself on a bicycle, that he'd gotten run over, that he's gotten abducted, that something really terrible had happened, and so I couldn't stand it. I jumped in my car and I drove home, and I was literally sobbing in the car. Well, I got home and he was out in he was in the playground playing with his friends, and he was like, "Mom, what's up?" I had allowed my emotions and my imagination to completely run away with me. It was a really insightful moment for me. All right, I saw a hand, Ryan, so let's come to you.
Yeah, so I have a couple questions for you. Let's start off with this first one because it falls just right in line with what you were talking about. So this one comes off of our Facebook, and it asks, how do you keep your imagination from running away with you? Isn't that a song? No, that's not a song.
Are you going to write it? Is it?
I think we should make that a song, though. I'm going to turn
We'll
that
make
over to
it,
Oscar.
make it a song or a skit.
Yeah.
Well, so how you keep your imagination from running away with you is we use our will to direct it, right? So we when the intellect first decides what the emotions are to respond to, after the intellect has made this decision, then the imagination is called into play. So when my imagination starts to run away with me, so my son has grown and he's been a firefighter and he's been in some pretty, intense situations. And when my imagination starts to imagine that there's a trouble, that something terrible is going to happen or has happened, what do? I use my will. I recognize that that's not something that I want the law to create. I don't want to give any attention to it. So I use my will to reshift my focus and start doing my spiritual work. I know that he's safe. I know that he's fine. I know that the universe is protecting him. I surround him in white light. I see him absolutely going about his day and being, and I begin to imagine that. Do you see? That's my job. That's my job. And the imagination can only run away with me when I think that it has power that's more powerful than my ability to say stop. That is not what I want to focus on. That is not what I want to attend to. Is it easy? No. But that's why we do meditation and affirmations and spiritual mind treatment and all the things that teach us how to operate this mental muscle. It's no different than learning how to do reps in a gym. It's not easy when you first start. It's hard work, and we don't always want to do it, and it can actually get exhausting at one point because we're constantly having to retrain our mind. No, I don't want to focus on that. No, I don't want to play that out. No, I'm not going to play that out. I'm going to actually imagine this, and then to construct it. Sometimes I have to really work on that. What does it look like? What does it feel like? And play with that so that I give my imagination something different to work on, right? That's our job. That's our job, is to build our mental muscles so that we can say to our imagination, no, we're not going to go down that road. It takes practice. And that's why we call it a spiritual practice. It's a great question. There's no trick. Sorry. There's no trick. There's no pill. There's no easy answer. I wish there was. I mean, I'd love to take a pill and have my body be completely fit right now. And because it's not, it's healthy and it's slim, but it's not as fit as I would like to be. Boy, would I love a magic pill. But what I know is that I actually have to work it and move it, and I have to be the one who says, get up, do the working, do the moving, and eventually my body will feel good and it'll want to do it itself. That's what we want to get to, where it's our habit. Where it's my habit to move my body, where it's my habit for my imagination to go where I want it to go. Right now, it's a habit for it to catastrophize or to go to the worst possible scenario. It's really just a habit that we've learned along the way. And sometimes we think that, well, if I imagine the worst that can possibly happen, somehow I'm protecting myself. And it's kind of a weird thing that we can do. So, great question. Thank you. Ryan, I'm going to come back to you. You said you had more than one.
Yeah, I have another question, and then I'm going to bring Connie into the room. So this question, I love this question because it really applies to everything going on right now. Would you give an example of healing our political system versus a healing of a person's psychological issues?
Like an example that it has happened, or an example of how we can work with it now? Yeah, that's a great question. So we've just lost a beautiful woman on our Supreme Court, and where there is a collective sense of gasping on one side and possibility on another. Go ahead, Ryan. Sorry.
I just wanted to throw this in the mix since you asked it. It's an example of how we can work with it now.
Yeah, good. Okay. Right. And so I fielded some questions and had some conversations around this. And my job is not to go into fear. Right. Our job is to use our intellect to decide what it is that we want to see as an outcome, to imagine that outcome, to stay utterly focused on that outcome, and to not allow our attention to deviate on anything other than the outcome that we choose. To bring our emotions and our imagination to play on the things that the outcome we desire, as opposed to feeding ourselves with Facebook posts, with news posts, with analysis, with fear-mongering. And oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, and whatever that all is. And that is our task. That's our job. And is it always easy? No. But that's what we're called to. That's how we're light workers. Do you see? We're bringing the light. That's how we're light workers. We can do the same thing with the fires in California and all up and down the West Coast and Colorado and all. And I mean, and I don't know if you remember in the 1980s or 90s, somewhere along the line. I remember Earth was the person of the year. Earth itself was the person of the year, and it was entitled "The Year the Earth Burned." And there were fires all over the place, including in like Siberia, and I mean places that never had fires. And that was an awakening moment. And we have that opportunity right now. We can look at all of this and say, this is not what we choose. We choose an awakening and a recognition that our environment is necessary for us to care for, that our political and business and a corporate awakening happens, and that the outcome is that we make changes about how we're doing this. We have seen that that's possible, and it has happened in the past. Actually, just saw an article the other day about the businesses that have, I have to think about now what the context was. There's a new coolant that has been manufactured, designed, whatever we want to call it. There's a new coolant that is way more environmentally sensitive, and because of our current political situation and the laws and the business and the way the business has been set up, that has gotten absolutely no support in our political process. But the businesses themselves, they have no market outside of the United States for the old kind of coolant. Europe and all the places around the world, they want this environmentally sound coolant. They want it because they know it's needed. So it's actually the businesses themselves that are saying we have to change this so that we can make money. Okay, Adam Smith, in the 1700s, Scottish person who was really involved in the free market, the understanding of the free market, Adam Smith. It's called Enlightened Self-Interest. And so we have to show ourselves that enlightened self-interest actually is possible, and it does in fact change things. It shifts things. And so we find those things to focus on, to show ourselves, and to continue to imagine, well, if it could happen then, it can happen now. If we can change this, we can change that. And we have to be diligent about what we focus on, what we concentrate on. Remember, I want to go back to this. The intellect decides what the emotion is to respond to. So the intellect is the one that's scrolling through Facebook. The intellect is the one that's picking the news articles to read, right? And if we keep poking at ourselves and isn't it awful? Look, there it is again. Look how horrible that is. Look at how bad that is. Look at the corruption. Look at the conspiracy theories. Look at and look at and look at and look at. Do you see? We're using our intellect to keep our emotions agitated, anxious, angry, and fearful. And then the imagination comes into play, and then we just keep playing that out. It's going to be, it's just going to get worse and worse and worse, and we play it out in our own minds. So our task is to do it differently, is to use our intellect to focus on A, places where it's actually working, B, spiritual truth, C, spiritual inspiration that really reminds us that this is how this works, and to bring our emotions into play on that, and to feel the emotion of how will it feel, does it feel when humanity is awakened and we begin to see sweeping changes to how this is played out, the environment, social justice, the political divisiveness. We have to feel the feeling of coming together and relief, and look, we are spiritually awakening. Whatever that is, whatever that feeling is. None of this means that we do this and say, I'm pretending it's not happening and I'm not going to pay attention. What I'm going to do is pay attention to what I'm paying attention to within the context of the topic. Our political system, our environment, my physical body. Do you see? That is that's the spiritual practice. And when you want to be adding our emotional content and our energy to the fire of the awakening of humanity to its spiritual magnificence, to the creating of a world that works for everyone, we want to add the emotional content and the imaginative, our ability to imagine that. We want to add that to collective consciousness so that it shifts. Do you see? We're not waiting for the shift so that we can then emotionally feel better. That's conditional living, right? That's living from the outside in. I won't be afraid when things out there change. No. I won't be afraid because I know how to change things. Therefore, I won't be afraid. Do you see the difference? We're living from the inside out, not the outside in. And there's only one person and one place where that directionality is available to us to make a decision about, and that's right here. That's right here. There's nobody else who can make that decision for us. And again, I want to be really clear. This is not pretending it's not happening. It is how we take it up, what we're going to pay attention to, what we're going to lend our energy, our emotions, and our imagination to. And it is our intellect, our will, and our concentration that gives us access to contributing our emotions and our imagination to the end result we want. Ryan, I saw your hand.
Yeah, well, we're going to have to go into an extended version of today because there's just a whole flood of questions,
Great.
And comments, and everything like that. So I'm going to get to the people with their hands raised first.
Okay.
And then if we have some time, we'll get into some of these comments that have been coming in through chat and Facebook. So the first person I'm going to ask to unmute themselves is Connie. Connie, do you want to go ahead and unmute yourself?
Hey, Connie.
Thank you. Hey, good morning.
Good morning,
everybody. Ooh, this is again another beautiful topic. What I have tended to do for years is to worry. And so my emotions are running rampant. And what I'm learning now is, and I'm just saying to myself, it's kind of like my first step. Hey, worry won't help anybody. Yes. It certainly won't help the people that you're worried about.
Right.
And it won't help me. So stop it and do something else,
Yes.
And that's really, really good. And for example, I have friends and relatives up in the Northwest, and they told me about what was going on. They were even wearing masks inside their homes.
Yeah.
And I did not jump in the hole with them.
Yes.
I started to affirm that the air is clear and will clear quickly. And by golly, it is. It's not because of my affirmation, but maybe.
Oh, actually, you know what? You are contributing to that change. So don't belittle. You didn't do all of it,
Okay.
but don't belittle your contribution to that.
Thank you. To the
Absolutely.
collective consciousness as well. Yeah.
That's exactly
And,
right.
now they're in touch with. They're going out for walks and they're happy and all that.
Good.
And so it is a step-by-step process. And this framework that you're presenting is extremely helpful. Thank you.
You are so welcome. And good for you, Connie. Worry, I think, I used to be a worrier, and I used to live my life out of fear and worry. And I realized that somehow I thought worry was there was two things. Was the tax that I paid for things to go well. If I worried about it, then I showed God, I guess, that I cared. And then that was the other piece. It was like, worry is the way you show your care. No, worry is the way you jump in the hole. Worry is the way you add your emotional and imaginative energy, because that's where the energy lies. The energy doesn't lie in the intellect and the will. The energy lies in the emotions and the imagination, and we have to direct that to what we want to add our energy to. And so when we worry, we're simply adding negative energy to the whole situation. And so to be able to say, I'm not going to worry about that. I'm going to use my spiritual tools to affirm, to see it better, to see a different outcome. We're adding our emotional content, the fire. We're adding the fire to the end result we want. Thank you, Connie, for sharing that. Ryan.
All right, I'm going to call on Mr. and Mrs. Fritz. Do you want to go ahead and just unmute yourself?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hey, Jeff.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm suffering with you here, and I only use that term because of this conversation. It's very interesting, but it's also it's a risky proposition to allow a great deal of imagining. Okay, that's for me. My imagination has to be managed, because if I am constantly in this space where I'm having to fend off dark imaginings, and there's a lot of work to that.
Yes.
There's quite a bit of energy, and it requires some resistance, which generally isn't a healthy thing to begin with. So what I was thinking of as you were going through this process of how it is that we imagine what we want, how we see the conditions. We are in that moment. We're giving away presence. All right. Now that's not a negative, but it has to be managed, because we're going into time. When we are spending our time trying to imagine how it is that we cure these challenges that we see. If we aren't careful, it becomes the routine, and it's hard to get back to just being okay with what is right now and staying out of resistance. So I looked into a little bit of Tolle, all right, just for a little inspirational comment, and I want to just share this. Break the old pattern of present moment denial and present moment resistance. Make it your practice to withdraw attention from past and future whenever they are not needed. Step out of the time dimension as much as possible in everyday life. Now,
okay.
When I think,
Go ahead.
okay. So I'm just saying, for me, I need to manage the frames of time that I give to this process of imagining a changed condition, because it really does take me out of the present. So
yes.
I'm going.
So,
Okay.
so
I see that.
yeah, so Jeff, I hear what you're saying, and I understand what Eckhart Tolle is doing, but it's really actually not, that's not the future thinking that we're talking about. So the science of mind would not say that when you imagine your end result that you're in the future. That's completely not true, right? What the teaching is, ask believing you have already received, and you will receive. So what you're doing is you're bringing the future into the present moment. So you could not be more present to the present moment than when you imagine the end result as already present. So Eckhart Tolle is doing something very different. His is a psychological reading of presence. We're talking about a spiritual understanding of presence and the use of the imagination. And so it's actually a slightly different framework. You're right, it's work. It becomes less and less and less work when we are willing to be the master of our imagination rather than its at the vagaries of our imagination. And you're right, it is easy for our imagination to go into dark places, which is essentially our fear. And all that is, when we imagine something not working out the way we would like it to, when we are afraid, it's simply our faith that the worst possible thing that could happen is going to happen. So what we're doing in imagining is we're using our faith to pay attention to the end result as if it were already in the moment. So Eckhart Tolle notwithstanding, the whole point of the imagination is not to live in the future, but to bring the future into this present moment and to see it as already done and to be in that. Now, you're right in that this is not the way that we want to be in the world every moment of every day. Right? It's when and I said this before, this is the box that we're in when we want to heal or change something. This is the process we want to heal or change something. So let's not bleed it over into just the way we want to be in the world on a daily basis. And I also am concerned about the use of resistance, that it's resistance to that imagination, that dark imagination. I would say it's not resistance at all. It's intentionality and choice. You are exercising your choice. I choose not to focus on that. I'm choosing to focus on this. And so rather than resisting the dark energy or the dark imagination, which we know doesn't work, right? What we're doing is we are focusing on what we choose to focus on, which has absolutely no resistance in it whatsoever. It is a deliberate change of focus. And that's why we started this conversation with concentration. What are we attending to? And if we don't like the word concentration, it is really a question of attention. Are we attending to what's going on in our consciousness? Which actually, again, is very different than accepting what is. So Eckhart Tolle has a bit of a Buddhist notion about accepting what is, which is not unlike what we do in the science of mind, because what is the result of our past thinking, right? And it is what we're experiencing in the physical universe at this moment is actually history. It's the outpicturing, it's the effect of previous causes, previous thoughts from 5 seconds ago to 5 years ago to 5 millennia ago. So we don't need to resist what is. We get to look at it and say, and does what is not a predicator of what will be, because we're actually a choice. And in the science of mind, we believe that it is not only appropriate but necessary for us to choose where we're going next. Otherwise, what is will just keep repeating itself, because we'll simply accept what is, and the universe will say, oh, that's what you're attending to, and then the law just keeps repeating it over and over and over again. So we want to understand it's a slightly different project that spiritual healing does than what Eckhart Tolle is doing in terms of dealing with our pain body and the vagaries of living in the fear of the past, the regret of the past or the fear of the future. Right? When we're using our imagination, we are literally making it real in this moment. We could not actually be any more present. And if we're not present to it and we don't experience it as real now, fully real now, we have not fully engaged the imaginative process. And really, quite frankly, we've allowed our fear to run away with us and spin it out in some other form. So yeah, so this is a very nuanced and way of understanding. And you know, Saint-Simon and Eckhart Tolle don't always line up. It's not that they're incompatible. They're just it's just a very different project in that sense. And so so I want to just really affirm and that we're not talking about resisting things that we are imagining that we don't want. We're not, resistance to it just gives it more power, right? We started with that. Sentence, which you can't find right now. It's not about resisting what we don't want to imagine. It is about deliberately turning our attention to imagining the end result as already here. And the more present that we can make it, the more we can feel it, sense it, know it, embody it, embrace it from a spiritual and an emotional and a physical point of view, the more fully we are bringing that into the present moment. And then that's the universe, then it's the universe's job to now play that out. And we may have to remind ourselves that that's what we imagined. So thank you for sharing that. There's lots of fabulous and powerful and wonderful and perfectly great things that Eckhart Tolle is doing with his work. It's just a slightly different project when here we're talking about we want to heal or change something and we're intending to do that. This is how we do that. So thank you. Thanks for your sharing. Thanks for your comments, Jeff. They're always insightful and get us to go a little deeper. All right, I think we're running out of time, Ryan. How are we doing with time? Do we want to take one more, or shall we close for the day?
Well, we could go ahead and take one more. I know that we have our upcoming Sunday celebration. So what I'm going to encourage you to do is keep your comments and your questions brief, but I'm going to go ahead and pull up our next one. Shauna, do you want to go ahead and unmute yourself?
Good morning, Dr. Petra.
Good morning, Shauna. How are you?
Great. This has been a wonderful discussion this morning. So I think the biggest challenge for me is always the part of the patience in the process where I'm very clear with my intention and very clear with the picture I am planting in today. But the gap between holding that intention and holding the energy of that belief while waiting on the demonstration. So,
Yeah.
is the only answer to that just daily practicing and daily concentrating on my intention, even when the demonstration doesn't show up? Just knowing that it already is today, even if I can't see it.
Yes. The short answer to that is yes, right? The long answer to that is just as Jeff and I were just talking and exploring about this imagination, is it in the future or is it in the present moment? If what I am intending and imagining I feel to be out there, then patience and impatience is an issue. But if I've done my spiritual work and I know that in the universe, in the absolute, in the infinite potentiality of life itself, there is no space and time, and I am living my imagination in the end result, in that non-space-time awareness, and I'm so fully embracing that it's already done, patience and impatience becomes a non-issue because I'm convinced it's already done. And then all I'm doing is, when I'm thinking about it or doing spiritual work around it, I'm just what I think of as juicing the seed, watering and fertilizing the seed, like we would plant a seed in the soil, and we'd just go out and give it a little water, give it a little fertilizer, stake it up if it needs it, right? But we're not out there, grow, grow, grow. Oh my God, are you going to grow? Oh my God, you're not, oh, you haven't given me any flowers yet. Oh, are you going to give me flowers? Right? We're not doing any of that. We've planted the seed. We planted the seed. We know that the plant's going to grow, and we know that it's our job to fertilize it and water it. And so what we do with our spiritual practice is we're fertilizing and watering the seed. When we have brought that imaginative experience and our emotions about that imaginative experience fully into the present moment, and we have fully embodied and embraced it as this is already done. It's already complete in the mind, in the consciousness, in the mold is so fully formed that anything unlike that is unthinkable. Anything unlike that end result is unthinkable. And that's our work. Our work is to shape that, and then the law takes care of outpicturing it. Right? So again, this is why it's not about the future. It is about this now moment. We could not be more present to it. And then I find for myself, I'm much more patient. Actually, patience is not even required, because I so know that it's done that now I'm just listening to the prompts of what I need to be doing to be part of the outpicturing. Should I do this? Oh, yeah. Oh, no, that doesn't feel right. Oh, call that person. Oh, do that. Oh, okay. Because I'm being pulled to the end result just as much as the end result is being pulled to me. And so that's why it's so important that when we do this imaginative work, we're making it real to ourselves. Remember that we don't create what we think. We create what we believe to be true. We create what we believe to be true. That's our job, is to so fully embrace that which we have decided to focus on as already true. It's not in the future. In the absolute reality, it's right here, right now. And I'm going to live in it to the fullest and best of my experience. I want to close with this paragraph. Well, let me read you this. If we keep our thoughts fixed upon the idea that this energy, which is also intelligence, is now taking the form of some desire in our lives, then it will begin to take this form. Now, it's now, in this now moment. This is the second to last paragraph in this section on 195. We are so one with the whole that what is true of it is also true of us. We are one with unmanifest substance, whose business it is to forever take form, and we are one with the law, which gives form. The entire order is one of spontaneous being and spontaneous manifestation. The law follows the word. Wait a minute, hang on, I've lost my place. The law follows the word just as the word follows the desire, right? And the word is sort of that combination of choice and decision and emotion and imagination and will all wrapped up. When all that whole process is fully engaged in the right order of things, that's the word. The law follows the word just as the word follows the desire. The desire arises from the necessity of the universe to become self-expressed. Not just accept what is. To become self-expressed. The law follows the word follows the desire. The desire arises from the necessity of the universe to become self-expressed. And we are the place where that is happening. There's not one thing wrong with us desiring things to be different than they are in this moment. In this moment is an outpicturing on the space-time continuum of the past consciousness, right? All that, thought, will, emotions, imagination. This end result, this outpicturing in current physical reality is history. The desire for it to be different There's not one thing wrong with that. Please, we are not Buddhists. There's not one thing wrong with it. We don't resist what is. What we say is the desire for it to be different arises from the necessity of the universe to become self-expressed. And that means to express more joy, more love, more wholeness, more happiness, more contribution, more expression, more of what it is we all came here to be, which is fully ourselves, and in a way that fully allows life to express and grow. And anything that is out of alignment with that are things that we have not only a right to want to change, but actually it's our job now to consciously bring things into alignment, because we are the place where the universe is waking up to see that that's what it's doing. It's not just, the law of averages. We don't care that 200,000 people have died of the COVID-19. That's just the law of averages, right? Now we want to say, no, that's important. We're going to imagine something different, that we can imagine actually working this through in a way that 200,000 more people don't need to die. And that's not only our right, but that's our responsibility, because we are the place where the universe is waking up to its creativity and to the responsibility of choice. Otherwise, we are simply contributing to the allowing of things to continue to unroll. And quite frankly, the people who add the most energy and imagination are giving the most juice and fire to the outcome that they are seeing and wanting. And so we can do the same. Not only can we need to. That's what it means to be a light worker. That's what it means to contribute consciousness. That's what it means to change consciousness, not just for our own lives, but for the life of humanity and for the health and well-being of our planet. So lots of good things to think about. Please do continue reading. We're going to start working through, we are allowed to choose. We are allowed to choose. It is a fabulous little section, and people, we reenact the nature of the divine infinite reality. So please do read those next sections. All of this is so powerful for us to think about from our spiritual point of view, and how we live in the world from a spiritual point of view. All right, lots of juicy stuff. Go away and think about it. See how it sits with you. Of course, there's no requirement for you to agree with me. There's no requirement for you to agree with the science of mind. Just see what you think about it. Test it out for yourself. Have a great Sunday. We'll see you in the gathering here shortly. Have a beautiful week. Bye for now.